I will switch to English because I see a lot of people in front who don't speak Serbian, so I think they will come here soon enough. After Milan's great talk, we will hear from Nikola Damjanov, the generalist 3D artist at Nordeus. But apart from his daily job, Nikola invests a lot of time in his personal projects, exploring proceduralism and generative art and bridging tech art gaps. He's well known in the Serbian gaming ecosystem as a person who selflessly shares his knowledge. So now let's hear what he has to share today. Nikola, the stage is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Did I write for myself selflessly, or did somebody else? Oh, well, thank you. Oh, good, thank you. I was like, oh, did I write that? That sounds a bit, yeah, up there. Okay, it's going to be very hard to follow the fantastic talk from Milan. Thank you, man. I'm always inspired by your stuff. It's incredible. It's going to be a little bit of switch of the gears in the sense that I will not be talking about AI stuff that I did, but something which maybe in these days with the AI boom sounds a little bit prehistoric, but let's see how it is going to fold out in the following years. As that like lovely introduction said, my name is Nikola Damjanov, and I've been working in Nordeus for the last 12 years. Currently, I'm leading a let's call it like a small R&D team, which basically has two pillars for its existence. So not five, only two. Maybe we are more or less ethical than AI. Let's see. So one pillar is that we kind of try to help production of all our products, not only products, but even like other teams that deal with products like marketing or branding internally, in a sense to scale the production in any way that we can. Sometimes with quality, sometimes with quantity. And the other kind of pillar of our existence is to see like what else it's out there, creative tech-wise, to kind of stay ahead of the curve as game production goes, so we can like test stuff in-house early, or maybe see what can be early adopted to kind of help us be better at game making. So I have this running joke that I go on like around the world telling, is that I can at least feel that I have like this split personality of like Batman and Bruce Wayne, in a sense that I do have this day job, as I call it, which is my regular working hours, where I spend most of the times the things that I just described, like making games usually. I've been working on Top 11, our flagship product, for a very long time, maybe even a bit longer on Heroic, which is sadly now closed, and I've since on moved to our new products. And even though my background is kind of like a 3D generalist in a sense, maybe like a more accurate term, especially in these days, would be like a procedural artist. Now, what that actually makes a difference is that I usually don't like hand model things manually. I rarely go in like actually move over like specific parts of the mesh. I try to build the systems that can like produce those meshes from me, but fully controllable systems in a sense that I can decide exactly every point where I can like interject that procedure or that system and like add some creative or art direction input to it. But my journey started like very simple in a sense that we were building games who need a lot of textures, and I got bored of making like 15th variation of a brick wall in Photoshop, and I was like, there needs to be a better way to do this. And like the scene enters like Substance Designer, which is a node-based tool specifically kind of made for authoring textures. That was kind of my gateway drug into this whole world of proceduralism. And I went on like making a lot of materials. Some of them were actually kind of evolved away from actually using node-based stuff to actually using meshes to generate like new variations of materials, like trying to make like a little bit of a hybrid workflow. These days, I even do experiment a lot with using AI to generate materials. It works kind of okay, but like most of the AI stuff, it's kind of hard to specifically art direct. And I did make like a lot of these materials in my lifetime. Very rarely any of these were actually used in any of the game, because I was never like even wanted to be a material artist. It just kind of turned out to be a nice like experimentation place for me to like try out this whole new way of working. But back in the game system, as I thought like this can be more useful than just like doing materials, you know, like when you're working on football games, when you want to make like procedural systems, you can probably expect where those systems can be used. Like most of the time I spend my effort like trying to build like a crowd distribution system for our games, and they end up looking like this, for example. This is actually from our latest release of the 3D Match, and this like works on a mobile game, which I think is rather impressive, especially compared to something that you could see on a mobile game a couple of years back. Now, this is not like the problem that I kind of use my proceduralism to solve here is not actually like doing the exact characters. They were kind of handmade, but actually deciding where they're going to be, like what's their distribution going to be, so they'll end up on every specific seat, and then again, so we can allow our game designers to determine like what's going to be their density, how the variety of the audience, like more or less flags and whatnot. And like doing that for a single stadium is kind of easy for an artist, but when you have like 20, 50, 30, like 100 stadiums, like that's when you're like building tools that can help you build this fast really come in handy. And also, like on a game like Heroic, which is not football, the problems are kind of a little bit different. And Heroic is a game which is like a magical game. You have a lot of like spells, VFXs, whatnot. And if you ever made like VFX, especially real-time VFX, especially for mobile games, it's usually some kind of a texture scrolling on some kind of a mesh, especially very kind of low resolution, because we do care a lot about optimization. This needs to run on a mobile device which is like 10 years old. So we used to like handcraft every single texture to make sure that it looks perfectly on every VFX spell, which again I thought was personally very, very boring for me, that more time can be like spent maybe in a better way. So I thought like, hey, like maybe we don't have to create actually full-blown materials procedurally. Can we actually create them just the part of those VFXs? Like, let's build only segments of the entire thing, and then we can like add manual labor or a specific art direction on top of that. And then we like did a whole bunch of VFX for that game using this specific system. Because once you have these like tools built for making specific textures, it's quite fast to iterate. But not only that, it's quite fast to build like this huge library of like these small reusable textures that can then like help you build, like being your building blocks for every new thing that you can build. And these days, again, I try to kind of make a hybrid workflow of like textures and modeling and everything being like more useful. So even these days, when we start building VFXs, we don't think of them as like one-off. I try to think of them as like, can I build a full-blown like adaptive like VFX system for any object that we might have in the game. And you can see one example of the system here. They can just take any 3D object that any artist can make, and literally on a click, you can generate all the necessary components that Unity needs to get to actually build a VFX system, like the outer shell, the animation timing, and then all you need to do as an artist, you can like art direct and tweak the density of the VFX, the colors, the frequency, all the other nuances that you might have to tweak. Sometimes they do like these one-offs, which are not like part of the bigger scheme, but just like solving a problem that we can maybe have like at a single point in time. Like I built this like a fantasy map generator, because we wanted to build this entire world for our PvE part of the game. And the idea was to have like this endlessly scrolling on a tube map, and like actually like drawing that by hand. Probably would look better in the end, but the focus was not on the quality of the map. The focus on actually building the entire game system around it. So I decided to tackle this not by actually generating every single piece of that map. I actually had some help from my artist that drew every specific element of the map. So my problem to solve here was actually just like content distribution and population rather than drawing every single thing. So what you had to do as an artist was you could just kind of define your continent masses, and the system would basically generate the rest for you. Or again, one-off problem is that we were operating in these 2-week sprints back there, and one of the ideas that we wanted to test out in the game was like giving players this, we call them achievement badges. And art direction and general like art quality of the game was kind of requiring something that like should look and feel a little bit like an actual badge, but we wanted to actually create like hundreds of these in a span of 2 weeks with a team of only a couple of people. Sounded impossible, but the whole idea was maybe we don't have to like think about these badges as actual 3D models and render them. Again, like maybe we can utilize other systems that we already have built, for example, a system for generating materials, and just think of these little badges as like re-rendered materials, because in the end we are going to deliver them as images. So what this system does is actually takes like your necessary components that you need to render a material, like your height maps, normal maps, color maps, and whatnot, and just does like a fake render of a material with an opacity that looks like a badge that you can generate in the game. Again, enabling us to produce on quality and on scale in a limited amount of time. Of course, we did dabble in like building maybe even like bigger systems for our game production, because one of the things that you kind of face as a problem when you're building games is the like iteration times. Like how fast can you test out the idea that you have? And then if you can enable your game designers to like iterate and then see their iteration in context, that's like a win-win situation. So I try to build like a fast production tool that enables like our designers to actually design the levels so they can immediately send to Unity and playtest. Then I went even a little bit like on set dressing. It was unnecessary, but I wanted to kind of challenge myself to see like, can we even maybe add a little bit more visual context to this playtest, so we like remove a little bit of ambiguity in the tests. And I do kind of occasionally, because I like to spend a lot of my lunch breaks doing a lot of weird stuff and experiment. Like branding teams, even once in a while, like calls me to do a lot of like in-house branding initiatives. This was actually from our rebranding effort when I was kind of tasked to build this like kind of a VJ new logo reveal for the company event, and I went like full on generative procedural art on it, creating like 20 variations that kind of went just on a loop on a video. And like just taking this single theme and then experimenting on a single theme is something that I usually like to do. These are some experiments that I did for like Nordea's 10th anniversary since the DX. You just like trying to experiment how can I visualize like just this simple piece of a logo is something that I find quite interesting, because like these fast experiments is maybe some of my like the most happy places, because I'm not that much focused on the end result. It's more like trying out an idea that I had at the time. And it's kind of freeing. Or doing just kind of procedural video loops, again, for in-house events. Like this is more in a sense of just providing some kind of a visual background for the things that we do. Okay, and a little bit back, thank you. And then, like I've like going back to that kind of running joke that I like to say, that I also have this night job, because most of the things that I actually do at work kind of source from my personal work, because I do a lot of experiments and I do a lot of personal projects at home, and they do kind of cross-pollinate in a sense that things that I learn at home I bring at work, and things that I then like battle test at work, they definitely influence the stuff that I do at home, and I still do. It's like becoming more a challenge, like the more kids I have and the older I am, like less time, but that's kind of I'm feeling normal. But I do still kind of try to at least maintain this effort and this level of personal experiments. And then when I started like doing like this stuff, like my first personal experiments in procedurally generated like art were kind of painful, because I was too ambitious. This was one of my first procedural artworks. This took months. It was like a lot of trial and error, because I wanted to do everything all at once. I kind of envisioned to creating this kind of head chimera hybrid that kind of looks like a sad willow. It's kind of in suffering, and I think that this was kind of good emotional, like a reflection mirror of my stuff, like doing this at the moment. But then I moved on for something which was like a little bit more forgiving, like building procedural environments. This was kind of inspired by back then even by Star Wars. You can see little Boba Fett in the corner. But then I thought, maybe I don't have to like create everything from scratch, because we all have a lot of this data laying around. And even though I was always fascinated by data visualization, I never kind of wanted to go into it in the actual like usual classical sense, like building infographics or visualizing data in a way that it has actual info sense. I wanted to see how can I use data to create art. And one of the data which was like really kind of easily available was OSM, like the OpenStreetMap, which was very nice because you get all these vectors of the streets. And even that, you get metadata along with those vectors. So like you can build a system that kind of knows what the road is, what the building is, and even you can get this nice data like how many floors does the building have and stuff like that. And at the time, I was like really listening into synthwave. So I built this kind of like let's call it like a synthwave town generator that can take any place in the world. You can just kind of pick your geological place that you want, like set your bounds of a city, and you like generate a synthwave like a version of it. And I think this is London. I think this is like Rome, and this is Manhattan. Just like one of like zillion variations that I did. Funny story, like I was kind of super cool and proud with this thing. I kind of think it kind of had like this nice aesthetic, and I went online and so I said like I kind of have a nice relationship with my audience, and I was like, and I asked them like, if you send me your GPS coordinates, I will do like a render of like your local area what you want, and like literally nobody answered. So maybe like asking people where they live online is not the best thing to do. Kind of like, okay, noted. But then again, like this kind of cross feedback between like personal and work. Like I work on football games. We do a lot of motion capture inside of the company. We have a lot of these kind of mocap data laying around. Like we have hundreds of animation, and I always thought about how can I visualize these animation? And kinetic sculptures were always kind of interesting topic to me. So I built a system that takes like any animation that we have, like, which is basically like a footballer running around, and like to create something which feels a little bit more kind of arty nicely. And then like this exploded into me generating a lot of wallpapers for the company, which again, felt nice because I was contributing at least to the morale of the company. I just took like one piece of it, and then I kind of built the entire system that can generate more detail around a single point of an animation. And I even explored, can I like use this data, this animation data, to explore different visual styles in a sense. I've always kind of loved line work, maybe because I always sucked at drawing, and I was kind of, can I generate line art in a sense that I don't have to draw? You can see the laziness is kind of a big theme for me. So I kind of experimented with generating like these things, or even like breaking it down like in a literal sense. I was kind of trying to push our marketing department to do maybe something a little bit more edgy, but they didn't like that. I guess like I think that like when you're building football games for mass audiences, you kind of have to build marketing in a specific way, which kind of the audience and the market itself expects, which is kind of sad. But they did actually offer like me to help them to explore something which is maybe a little bit more tamed. So I went in and I tried to like procedurally texture bomb our like base football models, because I kind of thought that maybe having like a dynamic, at least like we can maintain the appearance of a regular human being, but at least stylize the texture work in a way. Maybe that would be interesting, or maybe we can explore in generating background visuals in a more appealing way. This is me exploring like procedurally at least like some rendering variants of the stuff that we might use. And then like going back to the whole animation thing, because one part of the football, like the big whole like fame of football is this, like it's like challenge, the battle. So I also want to experiment, like can I like visualize that point of conflict in a way that feels dynamic on a single image, but also feels kind of fresh and new, especially like for the football imagery that you can expect to see these days. But you know, football, it can be interesting in times, but it's mostly like, it's art that you would expect, and sometimes it does feel a little bit like boring trying to like find the boundaries of how much we can push the visuals. So I do kind of then turn back to my personal work, and I try to build like procedural spaceships in a way, because I'm a huge Battlestar Galactica fan. And then when you have built the system, it's quite kind of easy to iterate on that. This is more experiments in like symmetry and object positioning than actual procedural modeling. And I also like to build these kind of small snippets, in a sense that I had this like idea. I was playing Stray, a wonderful game about a cat that just kind of goes around the town. And Stray has this wonderful art direction which is full of neon lights. And I thought to myself, if I were like building a game like this, how much time would I need to actually build all these neon signs? And I said, maybe not that much if I can build like a neon sign generator that actually can plug in directly to a game engine. And this is nice because It actually takes any vector input that you can even manually draw, and it generates all the supports and everything that you and exports directly to the game engine. And the system is kind of smart-ish in the sense that it can like recognize the vector width of the files that you send it, and it can understand that as animation frames, so it can actually automatically build the shader and animation for that as well. And then like I kind of tend to spend a lot of time on things like this, but they never end up being used in anything and I don't care because I just want to experiment and try out stuff. And this is kind of the place, and now it's like coincidentally since it's November, usually the place where I do experiment a lot. People who love procedural art, they kind of very much know about November. And I found out a couple of years back, the whole idea around November is that you have the month of November to create, like visually respond to these 15 prompts that you get during the month. The only rule is that you need to use like node-based tools, hence the name November. And this is like where I unleash all my like creative ideas, or I resurrect the work in progress projects that I never finished. These are like the projects that I did like 2 years ago. These are from last year. Last year I kind of had to like add a little bit of a new challenge for me. I called it like a month of shitty poetry, in a sense where I kind of wrote a very stupid like elementary school grade poem on which encompassed the actual prompt, and then I did actual artwork on like responding to that poem. There's a bunch of these. You can check them out if you're interested on my ArtStation, so I don't spend time on these now. But slowly, like the third part of my like life kind of slowly started creeping in, because when I was at university, I always kind of liked generative art and abstract art, because again, it was a nice test bed for the experiments without the actual burden of producing like high quality results in the end. And I kind of liked that because it was a freeing experience. So that kind of feeling started creeping back to me again. And I started doing like generative abstract art once again. This is actually part of a real-time installation I did in Touch Designer. Even like trying to do like geometric generative art again, and I got again completely drawn to this world. Again, like experimenting a lot, trying different things, both on animation level, on like audio reactive level, even webcam reactive level. And then occasionally I do get invited into art things, which doesn't happen to me, to be honest, very often, mostly because I'm like more on a technical side than an artistic side, which does kind of feel hurt sometimes. But nevertheless, I got actually invited to this awesome thing, which is like our country's Biennale a couple of years, I think like 2 years ago, 1 year ago actually. And the whole like concept around that Biennale was like monastery refinery, because it was like in Pančevo, and you have these very strange visuals when you go there, because you have this medieval monastery maybe like 600 meters away from this huge old refinery. So like the visual contrast it's quite stark, and the entire like concept of the Biennale was kind of geared towards that contrast in those two themes. And because I'm like too stupid to like art comment either on like oil production and especially on religion, I kind of thought that maybe I'll respond to this a little bit more kind of down to earth and visually. And since I got inspired by oil and the fossils, especially microfossils, the radiolaria, because they do have in a sense already a structure that feels a little bit procedural, I kind of designed this procedural flower that kind of grows, in my mind at least, from that kind of seed of oil and microfossils. But because I was like playing with the big boys, like going actually to an art biennale where we're gonna like mix and mingle with sculptors and painters and performers, I kind of felt a little bit, I don't know, overwhelmed by it, because I didn't want to go there actually with just like a digital piece. So I decided to actually build and help myself build a 3D print version of the flower. This is kind of the whole vision. I wanted to 3D print this exact piece. You can see the breakdown of the flower. And this was like a huge learning curve for me, because I had zero experience of actually 3D printing stuff. But it's a trial and error thing, because you need to tweak. And this is like probably the worst model that you can build for 3D printing, because it has a lot of intricate details that kind of interlock and are very thin, they're very sensitive for 3D printing. But when you build something like this from a procedural system, it's quite easy to go back to any step that you have to go back and actually make the adjustments and see them propagate within seconds. Because like the original design that you can see on the left was impossible to 3D print. It would tip over, the neck was too thin to hold the weight. And when you build things like just digitally, you don't think about these things. But when you actually have to produce them, then that's when it kind of hits you. Luckily, it was super easy for me to go back and just adjust everything to have the 3D print ready in time. We had our failures, of course, but in the end, I did 3D print the flower. I didn't manage to 3D print the background because like this was self-funded and that would like cost crazy amount of money. But again, I kind of finished the project to an extent and to my happiness. I did get a new toy in the meantime, which is like a robot drawing thing, which you can just kind of plug any vector to it and it will like 2D plot whatever you want. And this like really stuck a nerve again with my like desire and obsession with abstract. In this case, very specifically with line art. And I kind of like dusted off my like a bunch of my old like line art experiments, which I thought would be like a really good, nice way to test this new like process of creating artwork. And I was kind of sad in a sense that there was no like generative art museum in Belgrade, at least not to my knowledge. There were some exhibitions, but not like a single place where you can like go and maybe like hang out with your peers or like do exhibitions. And because I was on sabbatical at the moment, I had to this idea that, okay, I will open my own generative art museum. Very stupid idea, but nevertheless. I found a place, I rented the place, and I had this whole vision that I'm gonna like very selflessly do the first exhibition like my own, then gonna open the whole like project and the space for any aspiring artist that wants to kind of exhibit their own work. And again, I was on sabbatical, I went on a full like design spree for a whole bunch of line work. The whole idea is that the first exhibition was called A Knot, and I wanted to explore this, at least like relationship between line and code and procedure. This was kind of mostly built in Houdini with like using Vex and its own kind of node-based tools. And I did experiment with things like, you know, like complexity of the lines, the alignment of the lines, even trying to build some things like very specific art direction. Sometimes actually trying to simulate the final artwork to see like, can like, you know, like things like gravity or centrifugal force maybe produce some things which are appealing to the eye. This is one of the experiments, and then basically it comes down to actually curating and choosing the frame which I want to then like draw on the machine. I was also exploring because I was fascinated how the place which I rented was kind of organized, because it has like a bunch of these large rooms which are like interconnected with corridors, and I wanted to explore like how can like lines like virtually move like find the shortest paths through virtual spaces. So these are like one-line experiments that I also did. And sometimes I just did like things that were like visually appealing to me, like trying to visualize how can like a generative line art iris of an eye work, or something which is way more familiar as a face. And sometimes it was just pure chaos. This was one of my maybe most famous, or at least most lovable art pieces from that exhibition. I just want to create like, can I generate something which is basically chaotic, but again like slightly disturbing, but also in a sense appealing to the viewer. And again, because I was like trying to take these learnings from me building this 3D flower and moving my work from like digital to analog space, just like actually drawing them on a paper felt like it was a nice step, but not the final touch. I wanted to see can I actually make products from my art. And this specific like algorithm for like simulating like bound growth was quite interesting to me, because I wanted to see, can I build a lamp out of it? And actually quite easy, because once you actually build the line work, you can send it to a CNC router that can cut the line. You can just kind of then jam a very flexible LED tube, and voila, you get yourself a lamp. And just like watching this thing draw, it was kind of like maybe like quite a meditative experience for me. But it's also a very artistic experience in a sense, because once you actually design the line and set it to the machine, that's not where your creative process stops, because then you actually need to decide what kind of a paper you're going to use, how fast you're going to use it, what kind of a pen you're going to use, how does that pen mix with that paper. And again, like experiments, but on a completely new level, at least for me. And I was quite proud, like some things like really did go well. There are some pieces which I kind of felt kind of look really nicely in the end. So some things did happen like nicely. Other things didn't happen so well. Literally 2 days before I was supposed to open my exhibition, the building where my museum was actually caught fire. So that's the photo of me being rescued from luckily nobody was hurt. Artworks were a bit smoky in the end, with a little bit new flavor. But again, it was kind of a blow to to me, like more emotionally than actually physically. The exhibition did happen in the end, but in a much smaller capacity than I kind of anticipated. But the whole idea of this generative art or line art museum did have to kind of failed in a sense, because I lost the space and everything. So it's a bit shelved for the now. But let's see, like what maybe some new sabbatical will bring. But I did like. On that wave of line art, I did get like called to help out building this exhibition, which is around like climate changes and like dirty waters. This was kind of co-authored with the Center for Promotion of Science. This is an exhibition that was supposed to be like a traveling exhibition that travels around elementary schools around Serbia, just kind of teaching people like the dangers of like what will happen if we don't take care of our like clean water supplies. And Bojan Damjanov, she did like her art direction and creative vision of the exhibition, but I tried to help out in any way I can. One way was like actually visualizing different places of the world and continents in a new way, again like using my own like procedural ways of doing that, or also like building these kind of augmented reality like activations. This video is not working the way it's supposed to. Okay, never mind. But also I tried to build something which was new to me, in a sense, like building a procedurally generated illustration, fully from scratch. Whenever I do these projects, I always kind of try to at least introduce something that I have never done before, because it kind of forces me to kind of learn and try out new things. And this is kind of before and after the flooding sense of an illustration. And sometimes I do things even commercially. A friend of mine asked me to kind of build, let's call it like to animate their brand. So this was kind of project which was done for Algebra AI. It's a company that builds a like an AI system for like tuning your game. I think like finances and marketing strategies and whatnot. And I went full on procedural on it. Will this play? Come on. Okay. Did I do something wrong, or are we just having some technical difficulties? Okay, I'll be fast. Okay, so the whole idea behind this concept was like trying to visualize how would like actually like die. And moving forward, since it's November, let's see if this will play. Okay, and because again, like circling back to this whole idea of doing like new experiments all the time, since it's again month of November, and November is again very much active. What I've been doing like in the past couple of weeks is actually building this procedurally generated animated video loops, which I sadly cannot play for some reason currently, but trust me, they are awesome. You can check them out. If you follow me on any social media, you probably seen them already. But maybe this is like a nice. I'll take this as a sign to close this close this talk. Yeah, sometimes you face these technical difficulties, but it's okay. So this is kind of, we can come to an end of this talk. The whole idea was to kind of show you briefly how I use like procedural systems to kind of fuel both my commercial work, help teams inside of the company, but also like try to experiment a lot of stuff on my personal projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikola. If you have any questions for Nikola, he will be here again at 1:30 for a panel, so you can ask them then, because now we're out of time.
You have time to think them up front, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.